Well, it's here, the Nintendo Switch OLED model, after having been officially announced about 3 months ago to a rather mixed response. Upon the announcement, I put out a video talking about its improvements and whether it might be worth getting. If you'd like to see what I thought back then, there's a link in the description, but in short, I was hesitant and I wasn't sure about whether it would be a good enough upgrade for me. Well, fast forward to today, and I have one in the flesh. Now, it seems that I'm not important enough to get one a week early, like some people, so I had to wait until launch day to put it through its paces. So, were my concerns warranted, and is it worth you grabbing one? Hello fellow gamers, and it's the OLED Switch! Am I a hypocrite for getting this? You've probably seen a few YouTube videos about this Switch already, where they go over all of the intricate differences between this and the original model. You know, stuff like how the power button is different or the rails have a different number of screws. By the way guys, these are the air intakes, not the speaker grills. Instead, I'm just going to tell you my thoughts on using this new OLED Switch, you know, as someone who's been using the original model of the Switch since day one. What's the experience like, and were my concerns justified? Now, let's get down to brass tacks. That screen. The screen is just gorgeous!
Oh, it's gorgeous!
Even though it's still a 720p screen, the difference between the two is staggering. It's brighter, it's more colourful, the contrast is much better, and it brings really a bit of a new life to all of the games I can play. The screen size is not even an inch more than the original, so you would think it wouldn't make that much of a difference, but in reality, it's very noticeable while you're playing. Seeing games playing on this nearly bezel-less display is just so refreshing. I've even found myself going back and trying out some of my older titles that I haven't played in a while, just to see what they're like. In comparison to the original Switch screen, the difference is night and day. Well, obviously because we're comparing OLED to LED. Having said that though, the original Switch's screen is not a bad screen. It's just not as vibrant. The OLED model has an option to change the saturation of the screen, so it's a little closer to the original, but by default, Vivid is selected, which gives you the kind of saturation you might find on a Samsung smartphone. I'm finding myself just leaving it in the vibrant option because, well, you've got it, why not flaunt it? The build quality of this new model overall, it feels quite a bit better than the original too. The screen is glass instead of plastic, and the build quality of the rest of the main unit feels a bit more solid than the original. Even the plastics used have this kind of premium matte feel to it. Now we can't overlook that kickstand. It's there plain as day along the full length of the back of the system, and my god, Nintendo, this is what we should have had to begin with! Instead of putting our beloved portable console in the hands of a flimsy strip of plastic, we're now able to stand it up on a desk or table with far more stability and at any angle we choose. This was something that I was really looking forward to trying out, and it does not disappoint. You're free to adjust the Switch to your heart's content using a Surface tablet-esque adjustable stand. But don't think you're missing out if you've got the original Switch though. Nintendo released a stand pretty early in the Switch's life which lets you use different angles in tabletop mode. Probably because they knew the Switch's own kickstand wasn't good enough. In short, I am really loving this new kickstand, and this is what it should have been like from day one. But if you've got a regular Switch and you want that freedom of movement in tabletop mode, don't think you have to get the OLED model to achieve something close to it. Nintendo already have you covered. Something Nintendo promised with this model was new enhanced sound. They made it sound like it was, well, they didn't say what it was, they just said it was enhanced. I thought it might have a more dynamic range, or it might have had the potential of a sort of semi-3D surround sound effect kind of thing. I honestly was not sure what to make of it from that trailer. In reality, it's just slightly louder, and they have a tiny bit more bass to them, but other than that there's nothing to write home about. Well, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the original speakers anyway. Shortly after they announced the OLED model, Nintendo introduced Bluetooth headset support to the Switch in a firmware update. I was over the moon with this! Until I tried it. It wasn't the breakthrough that I would have hoped. Even with a premium pair of Bluetooth headphones, the audio delay is... it's really bad. It doesn't make for a good experience. So, is it better with the OLED model? Perhaps Bluetooth headphone support was introduced with this particular system in mind. No, it's still the same. Now, maybe you have to get Bluetooth headphones with a specific technology in order for them to reduce the audio lag, but I can say with certainty that the Bluetooth headphone experience with this new model, it's no different to the original Switch. Something else I wanted to check with this model was the battery life. It's supposed to be the same as the current red box models, but all I have are all of the earlier models and a Switch Lite, which all have a similar battery life. Now, given what Nintendo have told us, I expect this to last longer between charges, compared to any other Switch that I own. Well, I've spent much of the last few days playing Metroid Dread, which came out the same day as the OLED Switch, and I am surprised that I've not had to put this on charge nearly as often as I had to before. I'd find even spending a day playing Picross, for example, where I'd have to plug in the Switch quite frequently, but playing Metroid, which is a much more graphically intensive game, I didn't have to charge it nearly as much. I suppose I'd know for sure if I did a head-to-head comparison, but those have been done to death, haven't they? Plus, I've just been having too much fun playing this game. One concern I had was the OLED's compatibility with Labo, specifically the VR headset. Does the increased screen size make it impossible to play? Well, it still works, and it works well. It's still as accurate as before, and the OLED Switch still fits fine into the cardboard VR goggles. The more vivid colours from that new screen, they shine through here as well, making this already very colourful title, well, even more vibrant. There was a slight issue though. As you might expect with the slightly larger screen, the VR goggles lens didn't quite reach the edges of that OLED Switch's screen. Oftentimes, messages are shown right at the bottom of the screen, but you're not able to read them using the newer model as the bottom of the screen is just outside the scope of the lens. But other than that though, it works just fine. And you know, it was really fun revisiting this with the new model of Switch. The other features that the new OLED model boasts, although they're nice, actually have less of an impact when you have the system in your hands, and they're going to have even less of an effect while you're playing. The white model, for example, it's true, it treats you to a truly unique visual appearance. The contrast between the white of the Joy-Con and the black of the Switch itself is a direct reflection of the increased contrast you get from that new OLED screen while you're playing games. But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to be noticing that while you're playing, you're just going to be too focused on the game itself. The new Switch dock now includes a LAN port which replaces the internal USB port. Now, although it is great that Nintendo have finally added a LAN port to one of their consoles, well, you can achieve the same before with a USB Ethernet adapter, and those come a dime a dozen. All OLED models come with 64GB of internal memory as opposed to the usual 32GB. And again, this is definitely welcome, but I don't know a single person who hasn't already got a micro SD card in their Switch, so adding another 32GB internally isn't going to make a big difference to most people. So should you get the OLED model? Well, I'm going to be realistic here. Call me crazy, but I'm getting deja vu from every other time Nintendo released a larger screen model of their previous handheld devices. You know, like the DSi XL, 3DS XL, and, well, I suppose to a lesser extent, the new 3DS XL. History is clearly repeating itself. If you've already got a Switch, well, unless you have to have that swanky screen and that funky kickstand, you don't need to upgrade to the OLED model. And plus, you're going to be hard pressed to justify spending 310 quid to get one of these, especially if you play mostly in docked mode. I mean, I suppose there's always the option of trading in or selling your old Switch, which could take the sting out of the cost of one of these. The Switch owners who would benefit the most from getting one of these, I'd say, are those who've got the earlier launch models and play mostly in handheld mode. The earlier models don't have the more energy efficient processor and therefore they've got the shorter lifespan. So that's one added benefit on top of everything else if you're considering upgrading. And that was the situation that I was in. I only had the earlier models, so the battery life wasn't quite as good as the newer ones, so it kind of made sense for me to get one of these as a kind of semi-update. Now, I've got to be honest, I've been using this the last few days and I'm really loving it. I also haven't had another look at my bank account, but suffice it to say, if you're upgrading, you want it to be for those 3 points: the better screen, the better kickstand, and a better battery life. But if you are happy with your current Switch, don't try and pressure yourself into thinking that you need one of these. On the flip side, if you don't have a Switch and you want to get one, this is the one to get if you can. And with the price of the base Switch having dropped to, I think it's about 260 quid recently, that makes this about 50 quid more. And I tell you, it's definitely worth that difference. But with that, I'm going to sign off, so thanks very much for watching. Have you been tempted by the new OLED Switch? Or maybe you're just happy with your current model? Or maybe you're holding out for the Switch Pro sometime in the future? Let everyone know down below in the comments. And, you know, while you're down there, please leave a like if you like the video. And there's always that subscribe button if you want to hear more from me. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.